what do you think maybe could correlate like a benefit of commercial that'll help you bring something to your narrative project or vice versa?
Yeah. I mean, um, with commercials, there's this like metaphor. I use, I'm like,
I love the
I speak
metaphors.
around everything in this. But there's this metaphor that I like that's like, with a commercial, you are like, if you imagine you're like building a chair and the company that is paying for the commercial is like, here's like the best wood shop you've ever been to in your life.
Mhm.
And you have all the wood you can imagine, all the specialty tools, whatever you want. But like, this is the chair you're building, and you look at it and you're like, oh, geez, like, okay, um, maybe not the chair I would build, but it's certainly not going to be. We have everything we need to do it.
Mm.
And I think that understanding in commercials that you were building their chair is very important, because a lot of times what will happen is you're kind of swimming upstream trying to change their chair and trying to make it yours in a way that
Mm.
like they have been through months of
Designing the
meetings
chair.
and design. And I mean, it's like, and this is the chair that is like the chair of compromise. It's like everyone has like given in that this is going to be the chair. No one's actually happy with it. Everyone is like,
Mm.
okay, like this will be fine. Everyone in our department has signed off on this. And I think that sometimes, one of the mistakes I made early when I started getting into commercials more was feeling that like my design contributions, as it were like either being rejected or just like not successfully integrated into that.
Mm.
And I was like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. And then I think that there is like an important thing in like releasing your own attachment to it and focusing more on the construction as an opportunity to practice building. And
Mm.
it's like, I'm going to work with this crew with this equipment and like get really good at making this thing. And maybe, if there's like a little tweak I can make in the moment and say like, hey, it might be kind of interesting if we did this. Maybe it'll get approved, maybe it won't, but you can't like rest your artistic merit on it, because it's just not, you're not even playing the same game. They're
Right.
playing a totally different game in terms of like, they're like, well, this chair, people watch it for zero point 0.2 more seconds in the Midwest, which is our primary market, whatever, like
Hmm.
they're doing all sorts of things that you're just not privy to. So for me, I treat commercials, I guess, as an opportunity to hone this sort of machining skills and like get good at the sort of nuts and bolts of filmmaking and be like, okay,
Mm.
I'm gonna just like really nail this. We're gonna be on time, we're gonna be under budget, we're gonna just like absolutely execute this chair perfectly.
Right.
And like maybe we'll give it a little flavor where we can. Like you can kind of play the game and like detect when there might be an opportunity to sort of like enhance it in some way.
Mm.
But ultimately, like the boards are drawn, the locations are chosen before the DP's even on some of
Yeah.
these jobs. So it's like you just have to kind of like, you have a little bit, you have maybe 20% flexibility in terms of like framing size and like camera movement and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And I think it's important to make those recommendations so that you're engaged in the process.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like releasing their chair from your sort of like aesthetic sensibilities, I think is really liberating in commercials. And
Mm.
I think that commercials have just made me better at executing whatever. It's like executing creative, executing the sort of technical demands. And, I think that like you can develop your sort of narrative skills and use those to kind of like enhance the narrative of a commercial and say, hey, like I think it would
Absolutely.
be really effective if we did this. And oftentimes people will listen. But I think that like there is this balance that you're sort of, sitting in with commercials that's very unique. But and then certainly there's like the financial necessity of doing
Of
commercials,
course.
which is like,
Yeah.
doing only narrative is so challenging because it's just especially as a DP, you're just not, you end up doing a lot of, I mean, I've done probably like 5 shorts for free in the last like year and a half. And
Hmm.
it's like, the only reason I can do those is because I'm doing commercials. And
Yep.
like, I think that, if you're like, oh, like commercials are an impure medium, it's like, that's fine. But like, that's why I get to work in narrative on some level.
Mm.
So,
I love that.
yeah.
I'm curious about this as well because I think I'm at the stage in my career where I'm trying to figure out. I'm still saying yes to almost just like everything because I'm
Yeah.
still young. I'm 26, and I feel like I haven't gotten to the point where I can really say no yet. But from where you are, do you find that you curate the work that you say yes or no to? Like how
Yeah.
do you decide like what is the right project for you? Maybe at this stage, or like when
Yeah.
did you start deciding?
I think there are 2 stages of this that are like different and important way. The first stage is like I say yes to everything, but I only show the work that looks like the kind of work that I want to be doing.
Mhm.
That to me is like the key to everything,
Mhm.
because it's like if I loathe white psych commercials
Yeah.
and my website's full of them, that's what I'm going to get. You know, people are
Mhm.
like, oh, this is the white psych guy. And I think that like one of the ways that I was able to shape the direction of my career was by really posting work that I thought represented the work that I wanted to be doing, in the sense that it was like maybe it was shot on film, maybe it was something where I had more creative control, maybe it's something where I was more involved early on with the director, whatever. Like I think it's like all of those kinds of projects I was like amplifying, posting on Instagram, putting on my website higher up, whatever. I think it's important to like still cultivate some of the other stuff that's like maybe lucrative but not creatively fulfilling, so that
Sure.
when the commercials come around that do pay well, that you have a portfolio that shows that you're not just like an, you know, an
Yeah.
artiste,
Yeah, exactly.
like, oh,
That's
is this, I
smart.
mean,
Yeah.
how many times have I heard someone say like, oh, like, is this work too grainy for this? You know, I literally had someone say, does he know how to shoot digital? Which to me, I was like, that's kind of cool, because a
That
lot
is
of my
a,
stuff's
I was gonna
digital.
say that's a really cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, yay. But so that's like one stage. I think that the second stage is like once the momentum builds and your portfolio is attracting rather than you having to pull in people as
Mm.
much, then you can be a little bit more selective. And I think that like it's dependent on the market though. Like right now, I'm not as selective as I was a year and a half ago. You know, it's like a year and a half ago, I was thinking about, I'm sure you've talked about the triangle where it's like, you know, the director, the creative, and the money. And it's like,
Mhm.
I was like, it's got to
Yep.
hit minimum 2 points of the triangle, ideally three at this point, because the thing is like, you book a 2 pointer and then a 3 pointer comes along and you're like, oh shoot, like now I'm stuck doing the
Right. Two
cheap
pointer.
job, you know, whatever. And so I think now I'm like, now I'm so heavily prioritizing things that are narratively or creatively interesting to
Mm.
me that is like, you know, it's not an equilateral triangle anymore. It's like some kind of like isosceles something, where I'm like, if the creative is good, I'll do almost anything,
Right.
because I just want to be doing more interesting work.
Mm.
Um, but I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that it's a personal decision every
Mhm.
time. I mean, there is no like knowing exactly what the right project is in that way. You know, it has to do with your schedule. It has to do with your life outside of
Yep.
filmmaking, which is also really important to sort of like manage. I mean, I think that it's a skill that you develop over time. It's like which jobs to take and which jobs to pass on, and it's hard to go from taking everything to not taking everything, because
Mm.
there's this feeling that's like, well, if I'm not working and other people are working, are those DPs working with my directors, and
Right.
are they going to come back? You know, like you can very like sort of, it's not like like territorial, but it's like there's a lot of fear, I think,
I
around
understand
like
that. Yeah.
becoming I mean, even now,
Forgotten
you know, I'm
about.
like, yeah, and I'm like, oh man, I haven't really had like a great music video in a long time that I feel really excited about. And then I'm like, well, ultimately that's kind of like just what's happening to the market. Like TikTok kind of blew up the music
Mhm.
video industry, and so, you know, but looking, I was like, man, in 2021 and 2022, I was just shooting crazy music videos all the time. And now I'm like, woohoo, like a vaguely interesting commercial, you know, like it's like the bar changes with the industry, and it's a weird time to be doing this in any capacity.